Well, and I believe we're actually live now on Cosmic Reality Radio as well. So I'll pass it over to you, Bill.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody, again to the third episode of Krononaut Chronicles. We are joined by three of the other prime Chrononauts tonight. We've got Ben, Derek, and Bootsy just joined the room, so he'll be with us shortly. But before we get into gratitudes, because we like to start with gratitudes as our first segment on every show, because you can never talk too much about gratitude. I do like to take a quick look at the almanac just to see what's coming up in the future. We are live doing that. We're doing this live on Monday night, and this will be posted as a podcast on Tuesday. And this is all sponsored, of course, by Mystical Wares, which is Derek's shop. And we'll hear from Derek in a moment. But we are just coming out of Easter Sunday. So happy Easter, everybody. Looking ahead in the week though, on Tuesday it looks like Jupiter and the sun will be conjunct, and Thursday will be Pluto and the moon will be conjunct, and then Saturn and the moon on Saturday. So maybe those are some things to watch out for coming up this week. But that being said, let's get into gratitudes. And Derek, why don't you lead us off this episode since you weren't here for the last one? But we did publish that. It is out as a regular podcast now for anybody that is joining us now and didn't know that before. So, Derek.
I'm going to have to still listen to that one myself, Bill, because I haven't had a chance yet. I've been kind of on a whirlwind ride on
Yeah,
this, and hopefully I'm not too echoey, by the way, because like I mentioned before the show, I'm in my home office. So, but yeah, so hopefully it's not echoey. But as far as gratitudes go, actually, it's kind of an easy one that I thought of today because I'm grateful for this podcast and all of you being here because I don't often find myself with such an open-minded group of individuals all at once to where I can go as deep into, of course, what we jokingly call woo-woo as I get and have people, add in as well. And so I'm grateful for all the other chrononauts and this time we have together. So I think it's awesome. No, I appreciate you all.
Yeah, this has certainly been a fun adventure for me so far. This is only episode number 3, and I've just had a blast putting, the last two together. So, yeah, thank you all for being here. And I guess I'll go next for my gratitude. I took a little road trip this weekend, right, to see some family for the Easter holiday, and so my gratitude was going to be roads because I was just thinking about how trippy it is that everybody's driveway connects to everybody else's driveway. Like you can pull out of your own driveway and then stay on basically what is this, the same road pretty much, and then end up wherever. It just takes you a little longer to get there, right? As opposed to flying or whatever. So yeah, just the infrastructure, roads, like that's I'm glad they're not blown apart and that our bridges aren't falling down. At least in my area, they're not. But yeah, I don't know. Ben or Owen, you guys can jump in whenever. I'm not really gonna do the intros because we'll just jump right into the gratitudes as the conversation rolls along. But um, yeah, what's going on with either one of you two gentlemen?
Well, I can jump in quick, and it's sort of, I guess, continuing the theme from the last few episodes. I've really been taking the opportunity to watch spring open up um, around me where I am now. And just today, some bees started showing up. So that's always a positive sign and welcome, uh, symbol of spring for sure.
I actually got to wear my sandals today for
Mm.
it was only like a couple hour window during the day where it got warm enough to do that, but still broke them out for the first time. It felt good.
Yeah, me too. It's been good, and with some of the energies we've been moving through, I guess, as a collective, it's been really important to get grounded. And this has been the first opportunity for me anyway to go outside without snow on the ground and you know, actually get that connection back established. It's been a while. So
Yes, speaking of grounding, one of the rocks that came into our lives over this past weekend was actually a gift to my wife for my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. It was her birthday not too long ago. It was this huge, I'll grab it here in a second if I can remember where she put it, but it's this huge it's this huge chunk of specular hematite. It's like
Oh,
this big. It's super heavy.
With mica in it.
Yeah, it's shiny on the outside.
Yeah, it's got some mica in it. Yeah, that's interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's this giant slab of it. I read about it a little bit in my encyclopedia book, and it's pretty much, it said it was the strongest stone for grounding. Like out of all the stones, it's supposed to be top stone for that, apparently. I don't know.
That was written before shungite was well known.
Oh,
That's
so shungite trumps that then?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Nothing's better for grounding than shungite, other than just dropping yourself on the ground and hugging it. Yeah, and shungite's the best. So if you're flying, and I just flew from Vegas, like I said, and we get into that. And actually, I'm about to start a bunch of shungite beehives, so I'm gonna let everybody finish with the gratitude first before I jump in a couple things. But yeah, shungite trumps that.
All right, good to know. Bootsy, do you have any shungite or bee related news to tie in for gratitude?
Well, I've been able to try the stuff that Derek from his shop. So I mean, I just have to say it's fantastic. I love all that. Especially the honey. The shungite infused honey, man. It's really good. So yeah, I mean, definitely a lot to share on that front. Lots of great opportunities, connecting with a lot of people. Also very grateful for this podcast. This is an amazing connection. And I'm also able to make some connections here locally and in town, business wise, and putting some things together, which is really fun, collaborating on some projects that could have some pretty cool outcomes. I think that's got legs. So I'm excited about the opportunity to collaborate with people, with you guys, to be here. And I'm excited to hear all about Derek's adventures as well. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, collaboration is what it's all about. That's pretty much one of the driving things behind this is just being able to meet with you guys on a weekly basis and some others. We actually had a guest Krononaut on last episode, Todd Cave. But yeah, the shungite products. I use Derek's the skin balm. It's shungite and beeswax. And I think is there silver in that now?
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's small silver particles in shungite, fine shungite.
Yeah, I use that stuff every day. I have some problem areas I work on, but yeah, it's great stuff. And yeah, you had some updates for us about maybe the store, maybe Derek, or your adventure to get more stones for the store?
Oh, I got all kinds of stories. Yeah, we can go all over the place, of course, with all of us. But I just got back from Las Vegas. And as my life typically goes, and I hadn't been there in a long time. I drive through all the time, going down to Arizona to buy rocks and whatever for mystical wares, all kinds of things. But I don't take a hard left and pull onto the downtown strip and stay there for 4 or 5 days, which is what happened this time. And then in synchronicities, it worked out, of course, and in all our lives, it's the same way. I just kind of stay hyper focused on them or pay attention. And I was walking down the road, and then we saw a bus with I'm trying to remember. Okay, Zach Bragan. Let me bring it up from. I guess he's Ghost Adventures, maybe. So he's the host of Ghost Adventures, or she'll like that on one of the networks. Lots of episodes. But he has a haunted museum down there. And so, we didn't know anything about this. So that was the synchronicity part, that the bus just happened to pull up in front of us and say, hey, well, there's that name that just the week before, Zach Bagan, I saw on some TV show. I think it is called Ghost Adventures. And a lot of people out there probably know the thing. So long story short, we went there. I'm gonna kind of jumping around because it was really interesting, especially I have to remember to tell you about the building next door as we were driving away in the cab, as we saw the symbolism on that. I'll just jump real quickly to that one and say it was the biggest Mason symbol I'd ever seen. So it was a Masonic temple next door, and that ties in a whole lot. Yeah, and I know Bill, what you said on the last couple podcasts too. So I don't know if you were aware of that lodge or not, if you've ever been to Vegas.
I've not.
Yeah. And my whole family has a past in all of that. So actually, a lot of stuff, maybe not for this podcast. We'll see. Depends where we go. Went to the Haunted Museum, and it's called, I've got now up over here on the other screen, Zach Bagans' The Haunted Museum. And I'm going to go quickly through a lot of this so I don't just bore the heck out of everybody and take up the whole podcast. But it's one of the first largest, it'd be considered a mansion. It's just off the old strip. As I just said, it's right next door to one of the largest Mason lodges that was built like a fortress, by the way, this lodge, to an unusual degree. And there's a reason for that. I did look under it. I think, I don't know if I should be putting that out either. There goes my ear. But back to the haunted house, went in there. And for those that don't know, Zach Bagan, Ghost Adventures, he goes around, does the ghost, another ghost story thing out there. And they take the ghost boxes. And I've got all these trinkets myself, and I make fun of them. They're legit. They work depending on how you're using them. But remember, I like to make fun of this stuff. So he has a haunted house where certain people have, and a lot of, again, somebody can search engine this later to get more specifics, but let's say there's a certain box, and some of these terms, by the way, I'm not going to see online for a reason, because they're that legit. I'm not going to be repeating these names of some of these widgets, I'm just going to call it, that he had in there. They're that legit. So let's say one of these widgets was at somebody's house and it got tied to these stories. Again, I'm sorry, but a lot of these you guys have to research it later, because I don't know the whole story anyway, a lot of it. But they're legit haunted items. It's not like he went to, hauntedhouse.com and bought some trinkets to put in there. These were dolls that are tied to things, or actually Harry Houdini's, this, that, or the other. So legit items. And sometimes pieces of buildings brought back, and sometimes, and here's where we're going to get into it, dolls. And I'll give you guys some of it so somebody can Google in the background if they want. One of these dolls is known, and there's no photos of this stuff, by the way, except for the ones he releases. They don't allow cameras in there, videos. You have to have there's a whole agreement before you enter, because people have issues, they have attachments, the whole, in their terms, the ghost and haunting thing, of course, metaphysical aspects of reality, but they're calling it from that description, is real, and people get attachments and stuff happens. So it's Peggy. The doll's name is Peggy. For anybody that wants to look that in the background or look it up. Again, I won't get into that whole story, but it is on display in a box separate from, you don't want to touch it anyway. And I'm just bringing out one of dozens of things. And this particular doll has such a past that they have there's lots of versions of ghost boxes. Some jump FM radio channels or AM every so many seconds, and you catch a word here and there. They had one here where it's called white noise or squelch, to where there's no receiver. It just broadcasts. So you're not hearing any audio whatsoever. So long story short, I just term it hold in space. So I make we've talked about these before, that soccer ball bubble around my space, hold a frequency. And when we did this, and you're not supposed to stop on this tour, especially in front of this doll, and there's a whole thing before it. And unfortunately for a couple of ladies that were behind me, got stuck behind me to see this whole thing, and it's all on video. We contacted their museum, and they're going to go have to pull the tapes and see what they can find on me doing it. Stopped in front of it, me doing the woo-woo stuff, being a medium in a channel. I'm hearing stuff in my head all the time, but I just blow it off because others aren't hearing it. And I don't want to be that guy. In this one, it was so loud and screaming. I knew others were hearing it, especially when I could ears ringing now, audibly hear the ghost box turn on full. First of all, it was a female voice coming through the thing. Everybody in the room was hearing, by the way. It was the squelch was gone, complete audio. And then a male came in, who I found out later in this museum, because in the next room, and this is a famous tour, by the way, so a lot of people listening or in the future, when they hear the archives, will know exactly these rooms I'm talking about. The next room had a male figure in it, I'll just say. He was jumping through the ghost box, and we straight up had male, female voices, plain as day English, communicating through this box that, again, isn't the type that transmits radio stations. And all I did, so the ladies behind me that don't know it's crazy woo-woo Derek who can do these things, I'm standing there, just hold my hands a certain way. I'll have to get into that later, maybe. Tuned it, and boom, the thing turns on, and everybody starts hearing it. And then they actually have to get us out of there. They let the tour guide know later, because evidently it's all recorded. And there were other instances in there that were just, just what most would say were unbelievable. But it was, for my, this stuff's day to day for me, but it was neat because it was such a device and others present. And that was a legit, what they would call haunted doll. I'll say that doll figure held so much energy and was completely being added energy to it with every person walking through, that other entities were communicating through it. So it's not that a certain ghost or entity was stuck inside of it, like some were saying. So anyway, I'm not going quick here. If you have any questions, Bill, go ahead, or anybody.
Would that make it some kind of like portal then? If it's just like a channel or anything to come through?
Yeah, okay. It makes it not just a tool, but a Swiss Army knife. So if you're aware that in this example, there's a toothpick in a Swiss Army knife, well, then you can use it. If you're aware of it, the answer is yes, then yes, it can be used as a portal. But if your awareness is, well, that lets in the ghosts and the goblins and the demons. Well, then if that's your awareness, that's the tool you're using. So that's what I'm saying. I always watch my wording with people on their understanding, because that has a big effect on things. Their imagination affects the energies. And I've seen that in good and bad in both ways. But yeah, it can be a portal, but not everything was jumping in. Like I said, the entity that was hanging, and they had some of his bones in the next room, that was hanging out in that room, used that energy, what you would call a portal, energy space for me, because it moves sometimes, to chat. And it had the box. It saw a crazy psychic guy standing there. It took the opportunity. And it was straight blowing out English. It wasn't like, what's he trying to say? Is he saying hello? Oh no. It was like just stupid hitting a walkie-talkie going through the thing. So that was kind of interesting. Again, I don't know, another half dozen instances in that same museum, because it was legit. Again, it wasn't a haunted house. It was items from around the planet, often legit body parts and things. And the stories go on and on for people who want to Google this later, the seances that are held down below. Anyway, so I'll just kind of stop there, because I never know how interesting any of these stories are. People.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen a number of the episodes that Zach produces, that TV show. And then I remember when he opened that museum, actually, there was some kind of live stream. It wasn't too long ago, right? It's relatively...
I didn't even know about it. I had no idea. It's one of those things I was supposed to get in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I remember hearing or seeing, because they did like a video tour through it, and he was, kind of giving an explanation of some of the items, but they went down into the basement. I remember this, I don't know why I remember this one part, but he had like dirt from a location from another haunted house there, and
I saw that.
like half a stairwell.
It's there.
What? I don't remember. I don't know why. That's the only thing that I remember off the top of my head about that spot.
That was a big time haunted house. I don't know, Missouri, something like that. These segments are on YouTube, and I'm going quickly because people can look it up on YouTube later. But what you're talking about is still there, and they give you the and that's legit too, the dirt they brought, because they had it sealed behind some steel doors. I could feel the energy, with air quotes. Anyway, that wasn't stopping, unless like saying you're going to stop the music from playing. For me, it didn't. But and then they said, get out if you want to. And when the 3 different rooms they did that, gave you the option of not going. And again, I have to think if I want to say the term. It's a box that's in there. It's actually lighting up the engine here, me even thinking about it. So I'll have to think about that. But the dirt and the stairwell that he did bring in from a haunted mansion, a legit, where tortures, all kinds of people were killed, energies, was brought back and put behind this door that all of a sudden the windows slide up. And then you can see it, but you can perceive it before you even walk in the room. Or you can feel it. Oh, heck, half the stuff's behind glass cases. And I was in there. I know I'm only on video for a small segment of these people that'll watch this later. And we can all do this again to one degree or another. And with practice, we can. I can hold up my hands and, I don't know, tone or tune the frequency in a room. And the stuff behind the cases. So while one of the tour guides was chatting about this thing or the other, I go 100 miles an hour, as you can already hear, and so in my head, I'm already playing with trinkets behind the cases. I'm like, oh, there's the cross. It was, I'm blanking out on the name. Anyway, I was making a cross, shaking the case and swing there kind of thing, and playing with behind the energies, because, and again, in that place, just about anybody could do that if they really focus, because there's so much energy. Again, I hate that, just using the word energy, but it's easy to access in a place like that when people go in all heightened and emotional. So it was crucifix. There you go. That's the word I was blanking out on. There's a crucifix from somebody so-and-so hanging on this other thing. And it was all creepy stuff. And I'm going fast, but it was a decent place. Started shaking in there kind of thing. So it was a lot of fun being in that. just checking it out. I had to do removals. I'll say, actually, sorry. I was with my fiance, Jalissa. She had, I won't say the exact thing, but a large amethyst quartz crystal in the shape of an octahedron pendant on. That thing, I had to clear it when we got out. It sucked half the color out of it. So half the color's missing from that pendant now. So I don't know, half the shade of purple, you would say. And for this is an amethyst, it was purple. And that happened basically because of attachments and people trying to hang on. In fact, what's unusual, at the very end, there's a trinket shop, a gift shop, or they're trying to do this, that, and the other. And I'm not a big guy, that whole lot of, again, energies. Well, I actually said, we're leaving and we're leaving now because of what I was feeling around me. It was like I felt somebody grabbing on and hanging on. I can slough off things, but still, my bigger point is it was that unusual and strong for even a woo-woo like me that I'm like, damn, that was some energy. And I'm getting it off me. We're getting out of here. And the parties before us, a couple of ladies were kind of like stumbling out of there. You get nauseous, just different symptoms when you're in a place like that. But it was unusual. But anyway, I don't know if you have any questions on it, but that was one thing we didn't plan and we ended up doing there.
So the pendant she was carrying changed colors from the time you entered to the time you exited?
How I had to do it, it affected that. Yeah, it was darker, but what we did is I got alerted to it intuitively, and I don't just go around, okay, what do I need to clear? No, I'm going 100 miles an hour, just like I am in this podcast, just from the next thing in my life. And all of a sudden, pendant, and I'm not wearing a pendant. I'm hearing this in my head, and I'm like, okay, finally, I slow down, look. And so I look at it, again, I'll say energetically, so it kind of pulses to me. And I was pulsing a lot more than normal, so I'm like, let me have your pendant, put it in my hands. I just hold it for a few seconds. And I've done this to what's called crystal tower, smoky quartz tower points, and it sucks the color right out of them, turns them into clear crystal, and other rocks and stones. Again, this has got to be a physics thing. I'm not the only one, but cleared it. And by the time I removed the added energy, maybe 50% of the hue of that pendant was gone. So I don't know. We need a big brain physicist to say, well, this energy did that, or I don't know. I just know I can do those energy things, and that's what happened, was the end result. So I didn't see any entity. I don't know if I could anyway, but maybe somebody else can, hanging on to the pendant. It was just straight up accumulating in my, scientific nutso terms, the frequencies of the environment. And again, what I do is I just flush it with love. I know it sounds cheesy, but love energy, and that's it. And then what's good for you stays, what's bad for you goes, and a whole hell of a lot went. I'll just put it that way. So yeah, it was interesting.
So like hypothetically, if all the color was to get removed from like any stone, would that then change the metaphysical properties of it? Like, is it then
It
like
does.
something different?
I do that. We have mines nearby in Washington State called Washington serpentine or healerite. It's a really pretty light green stone. And I didn't know this was a thing. I'm doing sessions. Somebody, and let me back. I had a piece of healerite in my office from the mine himself. They gifted it to me in my hand. A really nice, pretty polished. I don't have really a comparison because it's a unique color. And session coming up, was led to pick it up. Didn't know beforehand this was I'll just say an entity attachment on this person. I'll word it that way. When all was said and it was an entity out of alignment with them. I don't choose what's good or bad for people. It's like saying, "Ooh, that's too spicy." I like spicy food, so I'm just saying. I don't choose, "Ooh, that's a bad entity, I'm gonna remove it." I don't get into that game, and that's big picture stuff. I make this statement, whatever's out of alignment with this individual now. Again, I don't choose. So when I did that, I'll just say this guy was out of the line, and I could see who it was, so I assumed it was anyway, but it doesn't matter. I still have to walk a line. So I did that. When I saw that, it literally how do I say this? I don't know, vibrated in my hand, and I'm not looking at the thing. I'm just talking to the client in front of me, and this was an in-person one, but it doesn't matter. I found out, or remote, either way. All of it to send that, sat it down. After the session, and it was, I don't know, half an hour session, that rock turned like a putrid yellow color within minutes of that happening, and all the frequency, which you're saying metaphysical properties, that frequency was gone. It heightened because I was boosting that love frequency, and it pulled so much additional frequency on the physical reality level density that it helped me remove that. So it did its job. It ended up in a river, by the way. I don't keep it in my office. So that's like a dirty sponge. It ended up in a river with love back in orgone energy. I don't voodoo, and I'm making fun of this voodoo hex it and do that. No, just love. And I go from there. And then because I understand a lot of science, it's also called orgone. But yeah, and right now to this day, I've got Peter site rings we got a lot of vendors or not vendors, wholesalers, distributors, whatever, people that sell us stuff for mystical wares to sell, and they'll gift you a thing once in a while. So I got a ring of Peter site. Well, I gifted them a bunch of cosmic shungite is what it was. Long story short, Peter site ring in my hand, did a session, took it off. The thing was see-through, and I didn't even notice. It was Jalissa. She looked at it. She goes, "What happened to your ring?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just holding up my crazy hands during a session. I don't get into the showmanship. I actually get bored of that part. But that's just how it went. And these I still have them in my office. Nothing in this home office, I don't think. But Mr. Ware's office, I've got towers. I can remember I'm on camera up here too. With towers with the color completely pulled out. What we do is I do sessions in person in a whole different office, like I said. And then you look around the office and see what changed. You never know. So yeah, stuff happens.
Yeah, I love talking about rocks and learning about minerals and gems. I actually joined the local rock mineral gem club here in Grand Rapids area this past weekend. It was half price because we went to the show and signed up there. But last episode, well, no, it wasn't last episode, but Ben, you and I were having a conversation. Maybe it was. We were talking about buying for myself. I wanted to obtain an obsidian blade, and so we had a conversation about obsidian and maybe why a blade and what that connotes, and maybe why to stay not avoid it, but just be weary of what that is inviting in. But so I went to this rock show, and it just happened to come across this chunk of mahogany obsidian that I grabbed. So that was just synchronistic because I wasn't looking at this. I just heard my wife mention it. She was over at another table and just picked it up and said, "Oh, look at this." And I don't know if I told her about the conversation or not, but yeah, $20. I don't know. Is that a good specimen for $20?
There's another one right there, got sitting here on my desk of yeah, this would be a silver obsidian, kind of same difference, obsidian. Yeah, that's a decent piece for about that price. It's rough. I mean, it's frequency. You don't even need volume, so it's not even a volume thing. You're using it as an energy tool.
Right. Yeah. Another rock that's beneficial for grounding, apparently, and it works
On those, don't even on anybody, because I get people coming in and asking, "What's this, that, and the other?" And often when I open the little books of this rock is good for that or the other, and a lot of these I don't know. In fact, I was told yesterday we have, and I think we're the largest in the U.S. 299, and I'm going to go get one or two more types of available polished rocks at our store, Mystical Wares. That's huge, by the way, as far as walking into a store having rocks, energy tools, frequencies, of course, each one different to choose from. So when I was getting that, is use your own, and I built a whole computer system telling you this means this and that and the other. Don't believe me. Go pick the sucker up. See how it feels. Use your own intuition. And we even put books out there where psychic or rock and mineral or doctor so-and-so says this one's good for that. I don't care what any of these things say. I do put them out there so you can get an overall idea. But again, it's like somebody telling you this restaurant or this recipe is really good. No, it's all relative. Feel it, think about it, pick it up. But yeah, obsidian is good for grounding often.
Well, Bill, the tradition behind the obsidian, specifically with what you and I have been working on with the very excellent book of magic, it's a scrying stone traditionally. So yeah, just sit with that in your line of sight, so to speak, when you are meditating, and it'll probably help facilitate a little more visual messaging, maybe.
That's a great description, Ben. I love that you put that. That's just what I was saying too, was it's their multi-tools. That's one great way to use that. And obsidian's been used that way for a long time. Yeah, that's a really good way.
And it's I've been trying to get my hands on a big enough chunk that it'll I can I don't know the proper term, but cleave off a piece, because oftentimes it'll be very reflective, and it was used early as a mirror, and scrying in an obsidian mirror, I've heard, is a very powerful tool to have
It
on your
is.
altar, in your toolbox, and using that. Well, the mirror work in general is, I mean, I don't know if you've done much of that. It'll blow your
I
mind.
have.
But,
I make
but
scrying mirrors.
yeah, with the obsidian mirror, I think there's something to it,
And actually, I was wrong. This one's rainbow obsidian. I just turned on my light, checked it out. And was
Yeah.
checking on that. And this is polished. I know you can't tell whoever's watching this on video, but polished to a fine polish concave. Awesome scrying mirrors. I make shungite ones.
Yeah, polishing is one thing, but if you can flake it off
I know, yeah.
into that, because that, I mean, some of the energies I work with when I get into that, hypnotic trance state, whatever you want to, however you want to call it, are really tuned into the stones, and I think there is something to having that reflective piece be a chunk that was cleaved off with another rock, and I don't know, there's something to it. I haven't sat with it long enough, but
Yeah, I've got big chunks. I'll probably make one of those happen out of my shop at the store. Some mahogany obsidian, similar to what you got there, Bill, and some other stuff. I agree with you. The more natural energy in making it and do every level matters. Yeah.
What would be the difference, if there is any, of using like your cell phone screen that's like not turned on to scry versus
oh man, I
know.
just got an iPad, which is like the highest tech shit in my life, and it doesn't sound, but it is what it is. And shoot, that thing's creepy as shit when it's turned off at night with a candle in the room. Like there's something in there for sure.
I wouldn't use it. Any electronics for scrying. No, what I actually
Oh man.
Here's one here. So what I have
Yeah.
a bamboo coaster that I pour resin with shungite and silver in it. This is a scrying. You can see it right on the camera. So I actually, I'm making, and these are ones I use. You can make your own with shungite and silver, and that's just a bamboo coaster with resin poured in there. You've got your own scrying mirror now, and that thing is strongest sucker I've ever used.
It's interesting with the resins too. I wonder.
Resins are programmable when you're setting them.
That's what I mean.
Well, then you better put it in the right.
I've worked with it a lot in furniture making and doing other woodworking projects, and it did have its own energy outside of the project itself, and it added something to it. So that's interesting that you're calling it programmable, and I can definitely see that. That's
why I blend fine shungite powder and fine silver powder in the resin, which is what makes it black. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, pendulum too. If somebody uses pendulums, which are great, you hold where my video above that, because your energy surface matters. Like if you're holding a pendulum, often people hold it at their lower chakra level, not thinking that the chakra coming off matters. So
I don't know if I would discount the electronics so highly though, or so you'd be so quick to discount it. There is, an energy to itself, and it's within its own grid, right? So, and you are in charge of letting in what into your world, so to speak, by what you follow and what you consume content wise, right? So you really can get it to be a representation of a reflection of your world. And there is something, yeah, for sure. But I mean, all protections in place all the time, I mean, I'm just saying there is, I've got my feet in the dirt as well, but there is something to the tech and allowing that reflection to be a teacher as well,
That the cell phones, because we all consciously know they're connected, they're always listening. I don't care if it's Siri, if it's Google or whatever. You now knowingly, and I'm not saying anybody doing, I'm not telling anybody anything. That'd be like saying don't eat the spicy food. Again, I like spicy food. How else do you learn what's spicy? But on a known, and I've used these things, connection, which is different than a Ouija board or a pile of runes in your hand. If you have a device with an active open connection to, let's just say, if you think of them as the bad guys, well, then there's a whole nother thing there where you're communicating and scrying metaphysically with another open end consciously with.
Well, yeah, but you brought up the bad guys. I'm saying it's a reflection of you, what you follow, what you consume, be it the music, be it the art, be it whatever, whatever it is. That is an accurate reflection of you. Right. So, and you're in control of what you follow and what you consume. So, and I'm still running on the program that if you see an enemy outside of yourself, that means you got something to work on inside. So, it's, for me, there is no bad guy out there.
No,
Anytime
I
somebody
it's all
says,
perspective.
yeah. So anytime anyone says they, I'm like, oh God, okay. Just,
you're down here.
Go forward with whatever program you want to run. But
you're down here in a reality. Remember, I got a big perspective. So, like I said, me walking through that museum, I didn't walk through an event any ghosts or goblins or bad guys. The energies or entities were there.
For sure.
We were sharing an environment, so there are those things around here. And so if I'm going to scry and I have the option of not using an electronic device that has negative non-biocompatible frequencies or picking up a bamboo coaster and communicating, I'm going to choose. I didn't say to choose anybody. Pick up your cell phones. I'm not worried who does that. I just don't do it because I have done those and I am a communicator. And I see it's a fuzzy channel and others listen in because I get to cheat and see. So then I have spicy food. Again, I have no judgment on this end. I'm all about everybody trying it all. Because once bitten, twice shy, because I've done that stuff where I jumped in and, I use the word armor, not protected, because it's a much stronger energy to come from or intention from my perspective. So when I do that, I've still had my ass handed to me. I don't care how much love and light I've had. So that's just a legit thing. So it is what it is. I'm writing a book right now too, where I put a bunch of these stories in describing it. But no, I know what you're talking about. I mean, but also down here, we can zoom out all we want perspective wise and we call it all sources, that and the other. Well, then you're just looking at it as a lesson. But then, I mean, down here, we also have to go day by day and realize these things too. I mean, it just depends on everybody's perspective. Really, I'm agreeing with you. It's just we're talking about it from just different, perspectives.
Yeah.
It's not a level thing either. Just literally not. It's not. It's So again, I mean, I've done the whole walking in with the frequency where not a whole lot touches me, and then just again been knocked. There's always a bigger, badder thing or entity or energy out there. Is all my understanding has been, and I get pretty deep in the deep end. I've done some, and there's always a bigger energy in the room I found.
And there's a pretty big difference between day to day and then zooming out to get the big picture. But kind of synchronistically, this little encyclopedia I was reading about the hematite earlier, and it said that it was very good for bringing or grounding the spiritual, the higher frequency stuff into the more day to day, the mundane things that we have to deal with, and to help keep the perspective that everything is just this love energy.
Yeah, you can definitely.
I do want to talk more about stones, but before we get into that, I want to go back to the Masonic temple that was next door to this haunted place. Were there like tunnels underneath it, or like?
I remoted in there. I never know again how much I've put on over the podcast or not. But when Zach talks about all this about the seances, and again, a seance it has 12 different words for it. Because if that word is used, often people apply negative understandings. It's forming an energy circle. But yeah, they call them seances. And in this case, I'd say some songs out of alignment with me. So some murders, some sacrifices, that kind of stuff. Lots of them documented, by the way, under there in that house. And that's an energy, of course. And yes, there were tunnels. Zach doesn't know about them. they're sealed off. To the Mason, that's literally next door. We're talking feet because we drove out through a wrought iron fence into the temples. And it's a straight up, people can Google Earth this right now, zoom in on the thing, look at it, fly street view. You'll see everything I'm talking about. And then you see that temple, how it's set. And when I remoted down into it, which is just, I don't know. I can, if I'm in the area, it's like stupid easy. I feel what's in there, which isn't always good, by the way. So I can remote, not just view, and I did this the military thing too, but outside remote perceive, meaning kind of pop in. So when we did it, it'd be like entering a big energy bubble for me. Yeah, I put my perspective, my perception, my metaphysical senses, I say it many ways for a reason, down as we were passing the Masonic Temple. And what I get, and I can pause any time, are quick, I don't know, 1 or 2 second videos or snapshots or pulses of energy or emotions as I go by of the stuff that happens there. And I can say, pause, stop, get into it. And I'll just tell you, the little playlist of songs I heard was a bunch of crap and I wasn't into any of it. And I have a big background in understanding a lot of this. And I'm not saying every temple does this, I'm not blanketing anything here. My experience 4 or 5 days ago, passing over this temple without thinking about it, going, oh my God, because I didn't know it was a Mason Lodge. We were driving over it after I felt this. And that's the other part. The taxi driver, he was chatting with us at the time saying, well, I'd be more scared of this place. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We're in a parking lot. And then I glance up and see the whole Mason symbol on the thing as I'm already perceiving it. So remember, it's like me stepping in something, not seeing it first and then knowing and then having to come back around. So that's kind of how it went for me. And, it was all just horrific stuff you've all heard in movies or on YouTube videos that happened under that specific temple. And I'm not a big guy to pull punches because if I'm asked, I'll tell anybody because I assume I perceived it to say something about it if I'm asked. That's why I'm not too shy about this. But I'll tell you, I didn't walk in there and say, well, I'm a country guy. I'm going to blast my country music and blast all your stuff away because I'm this, that, and the other. I'm not a fool. I've been there, done that with stuff in Germany when I was in the military. Yeah. So I was just saying there's always more to the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was in Vegas, right? The temple was in Vegas, you said?
Yeah. Right. In downtown, I forget. Somebody Google it. Yeah. Right next door to Zach Bagan with a B, haunted mansion. And yes, downtown, old downtown Las Vegas.
Yeah. My, the temple that I joined back home was an old building in the downtown of the city. And I didn't do a whole lot of research into other temples or places before I submitted my petition to that particular one. But come to find out, it's really important that you do that because the character of the men in that lodge will make up your experience. And if you're going to pursue, my advice would be, if anybody's looking into this, if you want to pursue that path, go and talk to these guys or have dinner with them first before jumping in, because maybe the lodge isn't well functioning or is falling apart because people aren't, there's not enough people there to do anything anymore, right? So that was kind of my experience. But yeah, it all, I know, because there's a lot of stories of nasty things happening in these places. I know I didn't have that experience, thank God. And yeah, I would just caution people that, because even after I got involved, I started still doing research and stuff, and you could come across stories of just horrible abuses happening in clandestine lodges that it's just not good for anybody. So yeah, I don't know, is there anything, I don't really know where else to go with that other than
I was done a Mason thing anyway. That was really about the no, my whole family's all past that stuff. That's for a whole nother podcast probably. No, it was more the haunted thing. It was just legit, and it was interesting from, again, my woo-woo perspective on how many legit items he had in there. Pick your serial killer, he had their items or parts of their actual bodies in there, this, that. I mean, all of it. It was legit stuff. If you're into all that, again, we didn't go there looking for this. It was just there thrown in front of us, and that's how we ended up there. And there was kind of led to do it. But yeah, so it was, and then it was probably for the video, because I guess we're gonna be chatting with him. I don't know. Because that sucker lit up. That I call it a ghost box. It's called other things, and I have a bunch of these things too. Like I said, some jump over radio frequencies, but this was a static one. So there are a couple chit chatty entities that day that wanted to be on the show.
Well, let's move on to new business. I know that I have plenty of stories to share. Ben mentioned that he had something specifically for the new business. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that first.
Well, not. I've got a fun project coming up. I think last episode I said I quit my job, which was a fun experiment, I guess, re-entering the matrix, so to speak. Good data sampling. I met a lot of good people while I was there. Had some fun, but I will be working with a few guys again this spring to put in boat docks around the lake I'm living on right now. I worked with them last fall, pulling them all out, and it's a very labor intensive, physically demanding job. These planks are, you know, 2 by 12, 16 feet long. Douglas fir, they come out at the mill about 90 pounds a piece, and there's, 40 or 50 or 60 of them on the dock, depending on the dock size. And I found myself really finding a meditative flow within that work last fall as well. And it allowed me to, I don't know, sort of deconstruct a lot of thought patterns and, for lack of a better term, shitty ideas that I had at the time.
Unlearning.
And yeah, and as I was deconstructing these boat docks, I was deconstructing aspects of self and other things. And so I'm going to take the opportunity this spring to reconstruct, as we put them back out and build new, going into the new year, astrologically new year. And so that'll start up, well, sort of up to the lake at this point. It's still covered in ice. It's getting thinner every day, but that's going to start up real soon. And I'm pretty excited to work with that whole idea and see if I can surf those energies into bigger and better,
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember when you had that gig for a little bit last year and you seemed to really enjoy it. So I'm happy that you found something. And that kind of what you said kind of ties into this little excerpt. I finished The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz since our last recording. It's not a very long book. It's short, super easy to read. I would highly recommend it for anybody. I think I'll be referring back to this one the next few episodes just because there's some really basic good ideas that don't take a lot of time to cover. But I'm going to do this in reverse too, like the reverse of how the book was written, because to me it just makes more sense for some reason. But at the end, and we'll get into it later, but he's talking about unlearning everything and then imagining a new, like how would you like things to be, like in your manifestation, right? So that's cool that it just tied in to what I had kind of picked out.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that book. I read it, try and read it once a year, but I've kind of realized I slacked off. And so I've started listening to it now while I'm doing yoga while I'm stretching in the morning. And I found it really interesting. That's a really interesting way to absorb the information too, while you're working out some kinks, so that'll be a fun discussion. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I struggle. I don't know why I struggle with audiobooks, because my mind, why do you have to sit unless you're doing something. Like I can't just sit there and then concentrate without like taking notes or something, because my mind will wander. I'm better off just like reading it, or I don't know. Maybe if I'm trying to get through it, I'll put it on like ×2 speed. I could do that for YouTube videos sometime, but anyway. This is real quickly. This is the I guess we've officially transitioned into the second aspect of the show. The first, for any new listeners here, which is kind of everybody. The first part we talk about gratitudes, just to to get the heart and brain coherence going. Adam and I had started this kind of tradition on the intros for 13 Questions podcast. So the first section we have the gratitudes, and then I guess the second section is a new business is what I'm calling it today. And this is just anything that exciting, weird, interesting that happened since the last recording that maybe inspired awe or a different perspective or closer connection to God, if you will. And then the third aspect or the third section is what we focus on to build confidence. That'll be the inspiration, hopefully, right? That's the idea anyway. But yeah, we're new business. Bootsy, did you have any weird or awe-inspiring moments since our last meeting?
I will say that I have had a cascade of synchronicities sort of seem to land in my lap. I've been working really hard on processes and how I could serve. And I will just say, I know I'm being a little bit vague. It's just because I don't want to share too much about the specifics of the project. But I just will say this: when you serve the muse, she will serve you. And I've been doing a lot of projects locally and connecting just with some new people in a couple of different capacities. And it's kind of cool how it's starting to bleed over. It's nice to be active in like locally in a community as well, because it was cool when the pandemic happened, kind of, because with the internet, the way that it was, we kind of came together more in a sense, started to meet each other. A lot of people I would consider to be of the same mind or community, right? Like open to similar ideas and interpretations. And now there's kind of been this expansion, like back out into the real world. And it's been good to connect with people, in a physical way again. So that, and then, yeah, I think there's some really cool opportunities that are happening, projects that I'm putting into place that could, could potentially have more of an impact and be even different than what I think they're going to be. You know what I mean? You get involved and it starts to evolve and things like that. So, but just working really hard on connecting the community, serving the people, like that whole idea of outer intention in that transurfing book. If you can find, it's the same idea as the invisible hand of the market, right? Like if you could find something that people want and help them get that thing, right? Like, I mean, you're helping everybody out, you're creating win-wins. And I see a lot of potential right now. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'll definitely share my results, my methodology, what strategies that we're implementing and learning, because it's all about growth. But yeah, I've been working really hard on a couple of different accounts in the community that are linking things together, and then as well my own business in addition to that. So I'm excited to report finally, kind of getting some momentum and some traction, being able to do a little bit more marketing and stuff like that. And being able to really start to get into a creative role more, which is nice, instead of being sort of beneath the wheel, how you can just be constantly doing all the things, right? And you're just like, am I ever going to get the chance, to get out of having to juggle all of these plates in order to, really have a perspective on things. And yeah, it's been really cool. I'm excited. So lots of new cool things are happening with that. That'd be my new business. Yeah, other than that, I don't think I have anything. Apologies to be so vague, but I will share as I learn more about how things are growing and what the really impactful things seemed to be. Really, it's serving the community. And good things I think do follow. So lots of good stuff there.
This sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to updates. Keep us informed for sure. Derek, I know we just talked a bunch about your trip to Vegas. Was there anything other new that you wanted to update us on regarding the store or anything along those lines? Otherwise, I do have I'll go into my spiel, and it kind of has a question that maybe you can help me out with.
No, other than, and we can jump to that, is just that I am gonna start some new local shungite beehives here soon. So I'll have some updates on that for people. We're starting a bunch of new beehives, and I'll be doing, and I'll talk more in that in the future too, some traveling on setting up those beehives in other places. But I'm excited about that, having some more shungite beehives locally, which are, for those that maybe are hearing for the first time, are treatment-free or organic beehives we use shungite with. And they're fantastically healthy beehives with no colony collapse disorder. So yeah, I'll just give updates as that happens. I'm going to build several new hives here in the coming months.
Now, if somebody wanted to buy a nuke, I think is what they call it, is that something that you would mail to them? Like
I wouldn't. You'd want to buy a local one. It is a Nook, and it's spelled NUC. Basically, it's a half a beehive, so it comes with 5 frames of brood and/or honey with 3 pounds of bees around it, and you drop that in a bigger hive with 5 empty frames, and that's how you start a beehive. Often,
So you want your local honey or local bees, and then you want to get
typically, it doesn't have to be, but they're usually hardier because some people, live in the cold, the desert. So, I mean, if you can, somewhat local, but often a lot of them come from California now. And I know the beekeepers who run the almond fields down there, they have some shungite beehives, but they still use chemicals. So, but yeah, if you can get them local, but no, I mean, don't let that stop you, because they'll expand from there as the brood starts, being born. They change pretty rapidly.
So beekeeping is actually something that comes up quite frequently in this news feed I follow on Telegram, and I saw a little blurb on there recently about Russian honeybees and apparently how they're more resilient. I don't know if they produce more honey or not, but because like you mentioned, like the cold weather, I guess they're more hardy that way. Do you know anything specifically about the Russian breed of honeybee by chance?
Yeah, I've had Russians. Yeah, Russians are the ones I use, and you can get those. So you can get Carniolans, you can get Italians, you can get, there's all types of breeds of bees, and I do like the Russian ones. But it really depends on the beekeeper if they stay hands off, because the bees know what the heck they're doing. You don't need to go and open their beehive every other day and go cramming chemicals in there. They've been around a while, a lot longer than us. So knowing that, going at it that way, they flourish well. So yeah, the Russians are good. And throw a couple shungite nuggets down there, put some shungite paint on the hive, to like think Faraday cage with that beehive. They're going to be a whole heck of a lot better off. And I was just sent, can't talk about this one too much, but some TV show contacted me recently, and they wanted me to give them some of the videos. And I actually found 4 of them today from 2016 up 4 years from there, of me recording putting the nuggets on the beehives, on the bees. And I don't train bees, I don't think that's a thing. And they run over to the shungite and ground and earth on it. So I actually have progressive years of that I didn't know I had until a couple hours ago.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's we have a garden patch out front. I live in the forest in the hills, and so we're doing a pollinator garden this year instead of a food garden. We might do food on the driveway just in, beds or whatever with dirt put in them, but there's without a fence here, like if it's not close to the house, the deer will eat it, or we've got moles and not too many rabbits because we have a lot of bird of prey. Which kind of ties into my story later because we heard 2 owls outside our window the other night, but I'm getting off track here. But we're doing a pollinator garden this year for bees instead of food because hopefully that'll be easier to maintain. So just a bunch of local or wildflower seeds put out there for the bees.
Nice. That's perfect. Yeah.
But that was not my new business. I already mentioned it kind of was I went back to this rock show that is put on the south side of town, not in the best part of town, and this comes back into the story later. But I ran into my friend that I met last year there, and Adam's not here, so he can't attest to this. But I talked about going to this show last year, and I met Fabric of the Universe is his Instagram handle, so I'll just put that out there right now. Definitely go and follow him. But he's a vendor there, right? Excuse me. He's a vendor, and he makes art. He used to have this huge exhibit at the music festival in Chicago called Electric Forest, I believe. And he would design these huge, like it was Prince tents, like Prince the performers. So you got the purple there going on and the weird sign and whatnot. But he I wanted so last year I'll show you what I got last year. And Derek, we've already talked about this in private, but he goes down to Mexico Ojuelos and digs these things find people. They find him. There's these little trinkets that pop out of the ground. This is just one example that I made into a necklace with some moldavite here, but my wife has a bigger one. It's got different designs on it. All of them are alien themed, and they show UFOs. They show like actual carvings of the UFO with alien faces on it, and Saturn is a big motif in this art collection. But there's rings. I saw a knife that he had. There's even little itty bitty tiny like grains of rice sized like baby dolls carved. And these things just pop out of the ant hills. The ants are bringing these things up out of the ground in Mexico. So he's made friends with an older gentleman down there who's been doing this, finding these artifacts in his family for generations, and they've been, they're not keeping it from the government. The Mexican government is refusing to acknowledge them as old, as anything ancient, even though they're being dug out of the ground, right? Simply because they're depicting UFOs on them. And well, obviously that can't be, UFOs aren't real, so these things can't be real, right? So how can the government acknowledge that? Anyway, yeah, the alien carvings. Actually, Anthony wanted to set up a podcast interview. I told him about Krononaut Chronicles. I didn't interview him for 13 questions. He did suggest 2 other of his friends who are more well-spoken than he is to come on the show and talk more about these things, which I would love to do. I just connected with him on Instagram over the weekend, so we're still kind of working out the details on that because the show lasted until, well, it was Saturday. But yeah, I'm sure he's busy at the moment, but we'll get that set up in the future. But Derek, just by looking at these things, and I don't know if you remember us talking about it before, like, can you, the Mexican government isn't, officially acknowledging these things. This is a good thing, right? Because in my opinion, these are authentic. And the art and the craftsmanship, it looks like these are like laser etched carvings, and it blows my mind that I'm able to have one of these things.
Yeah, no, and while you were chatting, I went on his Instagram account and looked at some other examples he has. Other items like this in history have, in this case, literally come to the surface or be found. And sometime, I don't know, a couple decades ago, they were little black spheres peppered around the globe. Some of you may remember that. These items are, they're being drawn to the frequency that's being held up here. So there's lots of ways of describing that. So as more humans, we like to use the terms advance and evolve, hold frequency, use more chakras, and trees will do it too. Actually, their seeds will evolve. Those things that are programmed with that same energy will be drawn to the surface, and that can be dug up. They'll be pushed up sometimes just on their own, or I don't care if an ant got involved and drug up a small piece. Doesn't matter how it happens, but they're going to be brought up, and they're like, some people call them grid markers or frequency this, that, and the other. So yeah, and then also remember, you're talking to me, so when somebody says ET, well, what does that mean? We're all kind of ETs. I mean, it depends on your perspective. Everything's that. So those are from a race, I don't know what the term would be, but over 12,500 years ago, that put different ones in so that they have those things come up. So they're space holders or energy holders. And as more of those things are found and dug up and passed around, they'll find the people that need them. So it's kind of like a song being added to your playlist of energies. So then you can then hold that frequency. And that's what I do too when I do my imaginary C60 molecules or buckyballs or octahedrons, or pick your shape, because they're all energy containers depending on what you're trying to do. But then you can do different things with them. But yeah, I mean, you asked me what direction you want to go, or let me know what direction you want to go. Yeah. But they've been round spheres before. I think it was like 10 years ago. Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. They were found on the beaches, and everybody thought some others put them there. So go ahead and ask whatever. But they're interesting. I'd not seen them before. Those ones, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So a race.
Knives.
Huh?
There's gonna be knives found. They're gonna find knives.
Oh yeah, I saw one. The other.
Oh, okay.
He had one.
There's going to be more. I'm just cheating here.
Oh, yeah.
When I look, whatever side I'm looking, I don't know if my screen's reversed, but it's to my right is when I'm cheating. There's just a wall here for those that are watching this on video. That's where a lot of my sight comes in. And I don't know why. Again, we got to find that big old scientist that's brighter than me. You don't have to be a scientist to be brighter than me, by the way. But it does happen over here. And so I'm kind of, when you see me looking off, I'm not getting distracted. So I'm chatting with somebody who's showing me those things. There's bowls. There's some that look, there's all kinds of them. And
Yeah.
they're, so yeah, that's
Some
interesting.
of them are pretty interesting. I've seen like altars, like whole tables full of these
They
cards.
open up too. Some of them open up.
They react to UV light also as well.
Yeah.
But so, okay, a race, if a location in which these entities would exist, if you could look up at the stars and like pick out a constellation, is that something that you could, is that a thing, or is it more interdimensional and not spatial, even though those are, I mean, space and time don't exist as we know, but like
what they were things that were built when it was a group of humans, call it back then, a race that were transplanted. This happens lots of times, by the way, from another race brought down, and then those were instilled with the frequency, or again, I like the word frequency because I'm a geek, or the energies. Again, what a vague word, and I have to use it. So when they're around you, it's like psychometry. They call it psychometry. Also, that's another way of looking at it. Touch a book, touch grandma's jewelry, blah, blah, blah. It's energy. Everything has a biofield, and that doesn't mean biology. It just has an energy field, so it doesn't have to be alive. So these widgets, and I don't mean that in a bad way because everything in my store is a widget, have those frequencies that were programmed, and it was Andarians. I don't know. I don't know names of ETs because, again, I follow no podcast. I listen to nobody, not because they don't know. I'm just too busy. I wish I had time to listen because then I'd get a larger understanding. So that's how it was. It's not an ET race didn't come down and bury them. They were dropping off some, I don't know, migrating, you can call it whatever. So that's what it was. They're not around anymore. That race, whatever. They're at least not like I see them because they have longer heads.
So because this reminds me of, okay, so the Four Agreements is a Toltec wisdom book, and this Toltecs were in South America or Central America, which are, I don't know if they're precursors to, I think they're precursors to Aztecs. I'm not sure about Olmecs, but the Olmecs were known for those giant carvings of the stone heads found in the middle of jungles. But so I've heard of a version of history where the Mayans actually were able to advance so far consciously that they just kind of they phased out of existence here on Earth. Is it kind of like what happened to the people that left this jewelry behind then?
No, those people died. They were just straight up just died in many ways. The Mayans are what we used to call an ET race anyway. And they didn't just pop out of existence. And some people say ships came and got them. It's every loosely 12,500-ish years. There's resets of the Earth's playlist of cycles or energy starts again. So certain groups can dance to those tunes and hang around. Other ones can't. This is a tough thing to talk about because we don't have the words for it. I don't have that big old word to describe it a certain way.
Well,
so go ahead, Ben.
If I can jump in, yeah, because I've worked with some of these
So you
energies or entities, if you want to call it that. But it is really just a perceptive conundrum, right? Because I mean, saying they died, sure. There's been plenty of races and tribes that disappeared from the timeline. And my understanding of it through working with these energies is that they achieve a frequency that is no longer perceptible to regular 3D earthly, not earthling, but earthly day to day, right? They're still around like everything else, but
that
just simply saying they died might,
there's a big picture. Yeah.
Right?
That vehicle they outgrew. Yeah,
exactly. So that's just the way I understand it. And they often can come back in to be perceived, not just by people like me and Derek, right? But it does take so much. It's so energetic to lower your frequency back down to be able to be perceived by these the normal frequencies we're used to. Let's say that. But they are, yeah, interdimensional is a good way to look at it, I guess, right? It's an easy way to comprehend it for lowly humans.
Is it kind of like, because I know you're familiar with the Celestine prophecy, Ben. I don't know if you remember at the end of that book where they were talking about being in such a frequency where the bad guys couldn't see them, essentially.
Yep.
And when the
Exactly.
government
Yeah.
Peru. So is it exactly like that then? Was that a good example at least?
Yeah. And I guess it's like I don't know the right physics term, but it is, you're just no longer within that timeline, right? Where the storyline that's playing out is still perceptible to some, but you're experiencing an entirely different reality too. Yeah. I'm still coming into this since the session with Derek, where my sight really started getting focused in. So I'm still working through a lot of it, but that Celestine prophecy analogy is a good one to be at. Yeah.
So would these entities be a breakaway? How would they be different from what would be called like a breakaway civilization, like some humans that were able to have advanced tech and then they developed off planet somewhere and we have no contact with them? Like, is that?
Well, it's not, that's what I mean. It's not off planet. I mean, it might be, but it's just, it goes back to the reality is stranger than we can think, right? Like there's so much more going on in the background, and that's what I'm now realizing with, I mean, that site upgrade, Derek, like I said, I'm getting a picture of other timelines while still experiencing this one, and knowing that part of my essence has bilocated into either another location within this physical reality or another dimension altogether. Like it's gotten so wild. I really do need to sit with it more and write it out so I can get the proper language. But it's all there all the time, right? So I don't know if it's happening off planet or just in a room you don't have a key to,
Right.
I'll tell you, I like to describe it sometimes like video on demand. So you can get into Netflix, choose anything you want anytime. It's what you're thinking of or where your perception is. Yeah. So yeah, it's all playing at once. You can watch season 1 or season 15 of whatever the heck, whatever episode and whatever part in it where your focus is. Because of course, time doesn't exist.
Yeah, that.
So we will, I think, have those two gentlemen that Fabric of the Universe knows on. Maybe Anthony will come on too. But just so I wanted to prime that for later, because they know way more about this stuff than I can articulate. There is a book out there that I bought. I haven't gone through it yet though. Anyway, breakaway civilizations, extraterrestrials, to make this sound not so far-fetched to some of our, I don't know, more other listeners that aren't as used to talking about this stuff. I did come across an interesting, allegedly declassified document recently on the interwebs. It was written by Robert Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein. Oppenheimer is the man who developed the A-bomb, and we all know who Einstein is. But it is, I put the link to the PDF in the chat. Maybe I'll include it in the show notes. I don't know if I can link a PDF in the show notes. I guess we'll find out. But it's dated June 1947. and the relationship is, it's labeled as top secret at the top, and then it says relationships with inhabitants of celestial bodies, and they go on to call these things extraterrestrial biological entities, I believe. And they go into pretty mundane drab stuff about, well, how are we going to make this fit into international law? And the UN really doesn't have oversight here, and all this stuff. But they do postulate of beings inhabited on the moon or Mars, or what that would look like if people wanted to colonize that, and what would happen if people were already there. I guess there's some very old Latin phrases regarding res nullis and res communis, if a land is occupied and if it's prime for colonization or not. So just to put a little dose of reality on this stuff for some of the listeners, like, this is not anything that is new. It's been this stuff's been talked about for a long time, and just name dropping Oppenheimer and Einstein, even though we talked about Dr. Pop last time, and Dr. Pop and Einstein, I believe, have diametrically, or had not, maybe not diametrically opposed, but different views when it comes to classical what was it, physics, and how the observer creates reality as opposed to us being independent of creation, which is kind of absurd in my opinion. But I don't know if you guys wanted to read that or whatever at your own leisure. It's really wasn't. It's only 6 pages long. It's not that interesting, but I just wanted to include that to make this a little bit more real for everybody, I guess, because we are going to have more conversations on the alien, quote unquote, aspect in the future. And yeah, all this galactic stuff is new for me as well. My first exposure to it was actually outside of talking to Derek, was when I got a reading from our mutual friend Janine. And I hope to get her on the show soon as well. I know I keep saying that. We've only just begun. It's only the 3rd episode. But I don't know, another piece I bought yesterday I wanted to share just because I think it's super cool.
Say real quickly, Bill, I told you too. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was
see.
just going to show you this cute
Yeah.
piece of not celestite, calcite. It's dipped in some kind of acid to get it this smooth look. It kind of looks like a cactus. And this is what the other side looks like. And Anthony gave me this little green alien guy.
Oh yeah. Ah, funny.
Yeah, we stuck him in there. But this is he has these to show people as an example of what something manufactured in China looks like, because this is made in China, the little green alien guy.
Mhm.
To juxtapose that with the stuff coming out of Abuelos. So, because a lot of people, like, he'll have this stuff on display for shows and whatnot, and a lot of people don't pay too much attention to it because they think it's fake, right, or made in China or whatnot, right? So
Yeah, you got to be careful though, because a lot of that stuff is, of course, even some of my wholesalers give me the not just opalite, but a lot of other ones now that they grind, like malachite. It's hard to get real. And I'm going to keep going on and on, but there's a lot of the mines were flooded in India this last couple of years. So a lot of these rocks and minerals are going to be really hard to find, and that's not put out publicly yet, because there's not like a spot on the internet you go to find, all the answers to rocks and gems. But I have been finding that out, that a lot of stuff's going to disappear here. I'm trying to think of some examples. There's some kind of, it's a pink calcite that fluoresces when you put a UV light on it, or a black light. I forget the name of that, but anyway, a lot of those are going away, so it'll be harder to find. Yeah, those are nice pieces though. Those are programmable. A lot of calcium. It's like a dolomite, calcium, magnesium, and zinc in that thing. Whether it's from the top or bottom, depends. But anyway, yeah, those are interesting.
yeah, he didn't know what type of acid it was dipped in. Are you familiar with that process at all? It's not like polishing, but it gives it kind of like a smooth, polished, like surface.
I don't do it. I've heard of it, but no, I'm not familiar with it. There's different types of acid you can dip certain crystals in to clean them off. I like keeping everything as natural as possible. So I don't do it, but that doesn't mean that sometimes I don't get shipments in of stuff that they have done that to. Like almost any fluorite you buy nowadays is fake, and everybody's selling it everywhere. And it's fluorite, the stone or the mineral. Most of it's fake now. But yeah, no, I'm not. I don't do the acid dips myself. I'm not that familiar with them.
No, it was the first. I didn't even know that was a thing until I bought that piece, and I bought it. I bought it. I bought it just because I wanted to support Anthony. Really,
Yeah.
so we didn't
Yeah.
have all 13 questions, but I did give him a shout out. What was I going to go next? Oh yeah, back to I was going to finish my rock story. I did mention that it was in a not that great a part of town. So to finish that, we went out for tacos afterwards, and we're standing outside of a taco place after we're done having a cigarette, and we're approached by a gentleman off the street in ragged clothing, and he's very nice, and he says, excuse me, and offers, we shake hands and we introduce, asks our names, and we exchange names and whatnot, and he wants a cigarette, so of course we give him a cigarette, and then he wants to use a phone to call his grandma, who's been worried about him apparently for a number of days, and conversation goes on and on. I learned that he was born in Aries. He's an Aries baby, and he wanted to sell me some weed. Apparently, he offered drugs, which is kind of odd because it's recreational here in Michigan. But he pulled some out and set it on the car hood because we're standing by our car, and we kept talking. And then he pulled out his earring, gave me his earring to hold for a little bit while he was talking about his I don't know where we're at this point. So I'm holding this earring for a little bit. Finally managed to give it back to him. And Ellie's my wife is doing something with her purse, and she drops a little bag that Anthony actually gave us from the show of these little grape agate nodules. And she says, "Oh, I dropped my rocks." And so our friend that we just met in the parking lot thinks that we have coke or crack or whatever, and wants to have a good time. So I have to explain to him, no, it's actual rocks. But the way I said it in my inflection, I guess, made him think that we were gonna party or whatever, right? So that was kind of an interesting thing to negotiate our way out of, because he wanted to ride home or somewhere across the bridge, and he asked us where we were from, and I said, this town, which is down the road from where we live. I mean, it's not exactly where we live, but I mean, it was an hour out of town, out of the way. So there's no way that was going to happen. But what I thought was interesting was what finally got him to depart was that after asking for a ride, Ellie, my wife, she just says, "Well, no, I believe in you. You can do that. It's just across the bridge here, like wherever he wanted to go." So it was like that sense that he just getting hearing somebody say, "I believe in you," like made him happy, right? Or got us to leave us alone anyway, at least. But and then he walks away, and then he starts yelling at other people in the parking lot. So to get out of our way, so we can back our car out and leave. So he starts directing traffic for us afterwards. So that was a very fun adventure. I know nothing happens by chance, but that seemed pretty freaking random. I don't know if Derek, if you have any insights on Mr. Parking Lot Man, is that just a
Did he? This is a tough line. Often, okay. Did he mention any? He wouldn't have probably. People in that state are often diagnosed with what they call schizophrenia. So, but in what so I don't know if he admitted that or not, but from my perspective, I see entities there, so they're actually talking to people. So, and that's usually not something you need a chemical to knock down. It's an energy thing. But he had a friend with him that was chatting with him in his head. And again, I don't know how much of that he acknowledged during the conversation, if anything. His was so strong, it's hard to hide. So I'd be surprised because he's still here. So he'd call it a guide. It's, again, if it was a doctor thing. So if you can't control the voices too much, if it's because usually there's an energy, I'll just say issue, because that's a big can of worms to open. Sometimes the communication just comes through, and then, again, down here, they'll dub it a term like schizophrenia. But again, that's just somebody chatting with somebody that's another entity. They're just incarnate. They're not in the body. It doesn't mean they're not there. And there's things you can do about that.
Well,
go ahead.
And I've worked with a lot of homeless and quote unquote schizophrenic, right? And what Ellie did with that little bit of encouragement was enough for his for a healing to take place and a hole in his soul essence to close back up enough that, you know, the extra energy doesn't get through as much. So then all of a sudden he, instead of needing things from you, he wanted to do things for you, is how I read that.
That's a good description. Because yeah, and sometimes somebody's saying, "Oh, it was an energy attachment," blah blah blah. I always avoid certain words, so I actually like how you described that. So yes, it made his biofield or aura hole, so there's less interference, blah blah blah. So yeah, that's a. I'm gonna have to kind of work with that one in my head, Ben, because I like it how you're describing that. Because sometimes I have to come in, and I can always fall in and say, "Yeah, he had an energy. It was actually an entity. Someone would say entity attachment, but if I start saying that, then the person thinks there's this thing on me and I can't get rid of it and blah, blah, blah." And so I don't like to describe them. That way.
Well, and that's what it's more than a clearing, right? I mean, you gotta have the healing tied into it. Yeah. Whether it's a person or a space or a tree or whatever it is, right? I mean, you need to it's a full circle, so to speak. So you're clearing and filling back in.
Yep, exactly.
whatever was there. Yeah. And that's what you and Ellie did as a team, seems like, Bill.
Yeah, that was.
And I mean, you had your just come out of a very high vibe place with a bunch of crystals in your pockets and like ready to go. So seemed like opportune timing. The universe took advantage.
Right. Yeah.
The stones she dropped. What did Ellie drop on the ground?
Grape agate, like little balls.
Grape agate. Yeah.
Like a little tiny. It was just a little, like a little.
I know grape agate is.
Yeah.
So and yeah, those hitting the ground released a little bit of energy that then helped clear that auric field and probably swept up, you know, whatever negative energy was attached to him, so to speak. And yeah, that little bit of encouragement was all the healing he needed. It's funny how little it takes sometimes.
We also had a couple of fluorite, like tetrahedrons, like diamond 3D, like cubes thingies. Those were in our pockets too.
Okay, well, those are programmable. So, like I mentioned that story earlier, you can clear them whatever way you understand clearing. There's lots of ways to make bread, but it's a crystal is of course an energy sponge of one degree or another. Didn't say it was dirty, but it is. So I always keep my sponge clean. So it's just something to think about. Yeah.
Toss them in a box with some Himalayan salt for a day or two. They'll be fine.
Yeah, salt does well, actually. Yeah, shungite does. I mean, yeah, like I said, there's lots of ways to do that. It's like, you know, saying how to relax. Well, for some people, you're going to light up a joint. For some people, you're going to have a drink. Some people want to hug a tree. Who knows? There's a lot of ways, just like clearing. So whatever you're led to do, just like on the rocks we talked about earlier, pick up whatever rock and there goes my ear again. Whatever rock you're meant to pick up, you'll just be led to it.
Speaking of clearing, Derek, I did buy some of those coasters that we were talking about earlier that you held up for scrying. I didn't use it for scrying, but what I'm using it for is setting my supplements, my vitamins on top of the shungite coaster, so it'll structure.
Yeah, there's little toroidal fields going off of those things, little energy fields. So then you can put whatever you want on it, be a quartz crystal cluster, which is I do as well, or same thing, a little jar of honey. Yeah, and that's science, by the way. That's a physics thing. You can take, of course, it's homeopathy if you take a glass of water, but it has been scientifically proven dozens of times. You can take a steak, a vegan salad, a Big Mac meal. I don't care what the thing is. Get excited, emotional about it, appreciate it, and it will structure to you energetically. And then if there's nutrients in it, probably not the Big Mac meal, but the other things, well, then those are going to align with you. And again, that's just science. Not that you guys need to hear the science part of it, and you already know it anyway. But I'm just saying, it has literally been scientifically proven, regardless of what it is. And you don't have to be in a magic yoga pose for it to happen. You just have to think about it and appreciate it. And I'm not dissing yoga. Yoga's awesome. I'm probably the worst person at it. But I'm just saying it's your intention and thoughts that really matter on it. So, no, that's great. You can use it for lots of things, those coasters.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps up new business. section. Unless anybody has anything else they want to add, we can move on to the what
Well,
else? Go ahead.
I mean, when I spoke first about the new project I'm working on, it was kind of a personal thing. One thing I've noticed sort of collectively is that there has been a shitload of clearing energy just out and about and in the field. So people are really taking advantage of the energies of this spring, it seems like, and cleaning out a lot of cobwebs. There've just been, it seems like with the added attention, I guess, to having a cleaner energetic field that is kind of roaming the zeitgeist, and people are more interactive with the energies, it seems. It's what I noticed with that regular punch in the clock job I had, was that there was a lot of talk, just out amongst the public about a lot of higher minded metaphysical ideas. So it's you can really feel it and see it, and to me anyway, see the impact it's having on society as everything else is crumbling. There's new things building as well.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that because it reminds me of another interaction I had this weekend with another one of the vendors at the show. He decided that somebody, I guess, somebody else who is maybe challenged mentally, like our parking lot friend. I'm not sure, but he, a very nice gentleman, said that he wasn't very sociable lately because he had lost his best friend. His best friend had passed away. So he was telling us about this memorial that he put up for his friend and how he only had enough energy to set it up and couldn't stay and had to leave. And he came back to tear it down. And this hat that he had left there got rained on. And so it shrunk and he couldn't wear it at the show to vend rocks because he sold more rocks when he wore the hat last year, apparently. And he was making these waffle necklaces, like waffles cut up and dipped in resin with like little like cinnamon sticks in there or chocolates or whatever. So he was selling those for like $20 a pop, which was another interesting interaction just because I don't know, he just felt like he was offloading because he's from Ohio and doesn't get out much, like he said, and interact very much. So he just felt like he had a lot to get off his chest, and so we sat there and talked to him for like a half hour, which was fine because we were there just to hang out anyway. But that was another interesting, like, clearing. Almost it felt like he was just getting stuff off.
Purging.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's take it back to gratitude. It shows that there have been a lot of people out there doing their work and a lot of grid work, and it's paying off and showing up in the physical, so grateful for all those folks and all the work that's being done on that front.
Speaking of grids, Derek does have a interactive map of the shungite grid or shungite that has been dispersed and people have reported. Is that it's still up on the website, right, Derek?
Yeah, that's up there on mysticwars.com. It's a shungite grid. I was actually just expanding that too. Yeah.
And is
Go
that
ahead.
just folks that are participating through the shungite program you've got going on there, or because there's I know several people who just make up, either a pyramid or a puck and are chucking them out at 5D towers and stuff like that too.
That all counts. You don't even have to throw it. If you just own a piece and you keep it in your pocket because that's your favorite nugget, put your city or something on that shungite grid on the Google map, and that's linked on our website. And it's tens of thousands, and it's a live map, so you can zoom around. And I'll tell you, if you're consciously aware that the shungite grid is a thing, that boosts it. And I know you guys know that. And then you can take part in that. That's how it goes. And then, so you don't have to just throw your stuff out the window because sometimes you don't have that much. You can have that little piece on your desk. So go ahead and put your state base on there. So there's tens of thousands of spots now.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering if you can just, because that map would get too big and confusing. I chuck stuff out at energetic hotspots all the time. So, but
Yeah.
I've always got a piece on me too. I've started carving on them recently, which has been interesting. Just kind of like those stones you were saying. It's sort of free farm automatic drawing situation, and it's gotten interesting. I got to figure out how to save all that dust though. You give me a good idea with that, Derek.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you
I gotta
what,
start
put
collecting
it in
that.
your plants, and that your plants, whatever you put it in, like I had a mullein plant that grew like 10 times the size of the guy who genetically modified it. He came and lost his mind at my store and he saw it. And I said, I didn't do anything. You know, I just gave it some shungite powder. And scientists have been doing that too. I printed a bunch of studies yesterday on scientists and the powder. It's a whole C60 molecule thing I won't bore you with now, but you probably already know, but that's one use.
No, I'd
It is
like to read
fun.
more of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Our website has that. And I'm going to literally put up like 20 more studies because they keep disappearing from the internet. When I used to link to them, people would say, hey, your links are broken. I'm like, no, they're not, because I make the website. And oh yeah, they're literally gone from I don't know if this is some Russian war thing, but the Ukrainian university that published a bunch of these studies, and I did this yesterday. I searched their entire university online. They're just gone. Everything on shungite. So then yesterday, I'm like, forget this. Oh yeah, I started just downloading, bought to pub.med subscription so I could download these studies, and I keep them on my own server now. The weird thing, one study I was wanting to reference on my server, and it's still up there, by the way, on my website, on our shungite FAQ page, the link disappeared for this study that also disappeared on the Ukrainian website. What the hell is that all? I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy because most of it's real, to believe it or not. What the hell? And it's still up there. So literally right now, I haven't had time to edit my website. So if you go to mysticalwars.com, I'll leave it up there for another week. So anybody listening to this podcast later, go to our shungite FAQ page, go to the bottom to our scientific studies, the first one or two, whichever one it is, that references, you'll read it. The Ukrainian study, all of a sudden my button for downloading this study disappeared on my WordPress server. It's not somewhere else. And then also on the Ukrainian university website, like I said, because I have enough of a tidbit spiel I put on there, the abstract, that I could reference. Oh, here's the university. I'll go get it again. And I just did this yesterday. So then I downloaded another 20 or 30 studies. I just took the whole PDFs and are about to pay for them. And again, I'll host them myself. No more links. Because, coincidence that disappeared from the university. I don't know what to tell you on that one. But that did happen. And that was just the last couple of days. So that's kind of like how my life works. And I'm not going to take it any further because I don't run with that. So I don't know what to tell you, but I'll tell you that stuff does happen if you hear about it. Because I know my website gets edited and I'm the web editor. I design the whole damn thing. Nobody has logins, me. And then what? Coincidentally, as it gets taken down from that university, it gets taken off. So I'm not buying that for a second, but who knows? But yeah, we got the studies on the website too, where scientists have given to cucumber plants, to mullein plants, to rats, tripled their lifespan. Rats die of cancer typically. And it stopped. They killed the rats to stop the study. And these are some of the studies they're trying to get rid of. Liver cancer. I mean, I got dozens of them now. In my office, literally a stack almost a foot tall right now, because I'm done with the digital thing. I got the printouts now as well. So, but no, they're legit, and they're not me in my garage. I'm not like feeding my pet rat Fluffy some shungite powder saying, "Hey, this sucker lived twice as long as usual." No, these are documented studies done by scientists that you name this lab, and it's all on there, by the way. So it's good stuff. It cures cancer. So it says. I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV. Anybody listening to the podcast. But yeah, so it's all out there. They can go reference the studies.
Yeah, the hard facts behind the studies, it really does help to drive some of these points home, because a lot of this stuff sounds woo-woo, but like the last episode, I was kind of disappointed that you weren't there because I was so excited to have this study that Dr. Pop that talked about his work, and because I know that you like the science aspect, the hard facts, right? And we got to see how Dr. Pop was censured and kind of poo-pooed out of the field, even though he was proving that we are light body. Our bodies are made of light physically, literally. It's not just a metaphor. I know it's light bodies are thrown around a lot, but yeah, it's our DNA is able to emit light.
That's why your third eye, your pineal gland, is photoreceptor cells. I can get onto the medical science too. Why would a gland in the middle of your head have photoreceptor cells? It responds to light. And there goes my right ear again ringing. Your imagination and emotions generates the metaphysical energies. That's the best way to put it. I mean, when you talk all woo-woo terms and this, but it's really the same thing you call your imagination and emotions. Get into those, know they're real, and that stuff turns on, like it's happening to me here as I do that. So the visuals start going on, big loud tones and ringing in your ears, stuff like that on cue. That's the metaphysical stuff.
And then, so when we have those kind of ascension symptoms, quote unquote, is that then when we can be use our imagination in a sign, like create our own etheric sign language? I know you've used that metaphor before. Is that
what I would say? Okay, I would say, excuse me, you're in a band. We all get tinnitus-like symptoms, ring to that and the other, whatever. And because I get the visual, I'm like cheating over here again. What I see is it's an add-on, like another instrument. So you're getting closer to having an actual song being played where you can communicate. So they call it heartbrain coherence, they call it meditating, whatever you want to call it. But when you reach a certain state of being, a feeling around you, and it can be instantaneous, by the way, it's not something that takes a lot of time. It can, it varies. But then those other metaphysical frequencies tune in. So it's not that there's a message and you're not saying this in the ringing in your ears. It means, okay, I've got another, in my odd analogy, another instrument playing. So I'm getting closer to having better communication. So now I have the realization that you're not going deaf because you heard tones in your ears. Know that it's a metaphysical thing and your aura is accessing more densities that are already there. Think tuning a radio, you're honing that channel. Get excited about it. Let your imagination go. That's how you communicate. People can be instant channels or mediums if you just use the right terms and nobody tells you got to climb a certain mountaintop or have Guru Bob thump you on the forehead beforehand. That's not a thing. You can go do that all you want, but it's really just realizing you're accessing your chakras or metaphysical senses. And as you realize that, if that's feeling a weird subtle energy or whoosh around you, just know that, oh, okay, there's another tone or tune or frequency in the environment. Now use your chakras, your gut instincts, your emotions to access it. And then as you do that, it hones more. And then it all blurs. Because like when you eat food, you don't look at food and then taste it and then feel it and then smell it. And then you do it all at once. Us humans are usually hyper-focusing. I want to be a psychic. I want to be a blah, 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 blah. Just do it like Ben does a lot of the time, because I see him flinging, I'm pointing at the camera here, flinging frequencies. I don't know if you know what they are. I'm not dissing him, complimenting you. Just a freaking surfer jumping on the board, doing the damn thing, not having to follow some instruction booklet. So that's a good way to do it. And then that stuff hones, it gets easier. But that's what the tunes and tones are. And I get them because I'll glance up and then that happens. And then I get a visual like over here for me, or sometimes it's an entity. Somebody wanted to chit chat, and then it's called the medium thing. But I don't really separate that way.
So would it be fair to say then, in developing these other senses, like our other chakra senses and the ways of perceiving, that imagination is another key ingredient that is
They're not even abilities, they're understandings. You don't need an ability. Everybody has these abilities. They need to enhance their understandings of the ability, get the hell out of their own way, my mama blank eye, and then all of a sudden it heightens. Because a wine taster isn't born with 12 more smell buds in their nose and mouth than us. They simply hone that sense, and I'm using a wine taster as an analogy, or a cheese taster, doesn't matter. And then they can heighten that. The psychic thing is the same thing. You all got third eyes, you all got pineal glands. Mine's not extra big. No, it's just a way of understanding. And when you do that, like jumping on a bike, nobody teaches you how to ride a bike. You just jump on the sucker and go. And if you fall off, get back on. Eventually, you're not looking at the pedals, you're just riding. I'd suggest everybody quit hyper-focusing or listening to, again, not everybody's doing it, but gurus and masters. I mean, listen to people, take suggestions, but know you're your own guru or master. and all of a sudden it happens, it heightens on its own is the thing. Because people come in and say, Derek, how'd you reach psychic level 5? And I'm making fun of it because there's not a psychic level 5. I'm like, I got out of my own way. It was a realization is really what it is. And that's a tough thing to say, but it really is. Anyway, I hope
and practiced, right, Derek? I
Yeah.
mean, it is practice.
Absolutely.
And that's actually, Owen might have been the first person I heard say this, but it's a quote. And I think Buddha said it, that if you meet a Buddha on the road, kill it. Was it? I can't remember if that was Owen who said that. I heard that from first or not, but it is. Obviously, you don't want to kill a guy you meet on the road, but it is like you're looking at yourself. If you meet a Buddha on the road, you're looking at yourself, right? So, you are your own best teacher most of the time.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that might have been from Kill Bill or something. It's like if God gets in your way, cut him. Like that.
I haven't seen that movie in a while.
I don't know. Maybe I'm misquoting, but something.
Speaking of quotes, to kind of touch on something that Ben corrected me on after our last recording, the last episode I had a quote. I attributed it to a Terrence McKenna, but it's not originally Terrence's saying, but it's the whole premise of the world is more weird than we're able to think, like a physically like imagine. Ben, can you clarify? I don't remember.
Well, I think Terrence said a lot to the same respect too, but the first time I heard it, and it was from a physicist in the 40s, a quantum, I don't know, he was a German, Heisenberg or something like that. But the quote I know is, reality is not just stranger than you think, it's stranger than you can think.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And I actually misinterpreted that. I thought he was just a philosopher from what little bit of reading I did of his work, but it turned out he was a theoretical physicist. But either way, I mean, if you get paid to sit around and think about that kind of shit, you're a philosopher in my book. So
philosophy is awesome. I love philosophy. All right, so we are getting up to 2 hours now. I did want to read just a little bit from the Four Agreements, the end of the book, just 2 pages, only because he talks about imagination here, and I know we haven't done a whole lot of Neville yet, but I've read all of his works, and Neville touches on the use of imagination a lot, and I know that Vadum Zealand touches on that in Reality Transurfing. So I'm just being able to connect all these threads, and they keep popping up in different places, and all these wonderful books written by amazing authors. So I really just wanted to share it with you and maybe get some opinions afterwards. But I think that just putting these words and this frequency out into the universe is a good thing. I know that it's going to have an effect on me first, and so I'm going to do it because I think that that's heaven on earth is a good thing, and that's the name of the chapters, chapter 7. And real quickly, and he writes, I want you to forget everything you have learned in your whole life. This is the beginning of a new understanding, a new dream. The dream you are living is your creation. It is your perception of reality that you can change at any time. You have the power to create hell, and you have the power to create heaven. Why not dream a different dream? Why not use your mind, your imagination, and your emotions to dream heaven? Just use your imagination, and a tremendous thing will happen. Imagine that you have the ability to see the world with different eyes whenever you choose. Each time you open your eyes, you see the world around you in a different way. Close your eyes now, and then open them and look outside. What you will see is love coming out of the trees, love coming out of the sky, love coming out of the light. You will perceive love from everything around you. This is the state of bliss. You receive love directly from everything, including yourself and other humans. Even when humans are sad or angry, behind these feelings, you can see that they are also sending love. Using your imagination and your new eyes of perception, I want you to feel yourself living a new life, a new dream. a life where you don't need to justify your existence and you are free to be who you really are. Imagine that you have permission to be happy and to really enjoy your life. Imagine living your life without fear of expressing your dreams. Imagine living your life without the fear of being judged by others. Imagine living your life without judging others. Imagine living without the fear of loving and of not being loved. Imagine living your life without being afraid to take a risk and to explore life. Imagine that you love yourself just the way you are. The reason I ask you to imagine these things is because they are all entirely possible. You can live in the state of grace. That's the state of bliss, the dream of heaven. But in order to experience this dream, you must first understand what it is. Only love has the ability to put you in that state of bliss. Being in bliss is like being in love. Being in love is like being in bliss. You are floating in the clouds. You are perceiving love wherever you go. It is entirely possible to live this way all the time. It is possible because others have done it and they are no different from you. They live in bliss because they have changed their agreements and are dreaming a different dream.
Oh yeah, he used a key word in there a whole lot of times, didn't he? Imagination.
Yeah, that list, it was each one was a paragraph. I just took the first sentence because I didn't want to read the whole thing, but the point was, yeah, that's what caught my eye. I highlighted every time that he used imagination because it was so repetitive, right?
Yeah, that is. And I describe that as like a channel because I look at energetically at people and let's say I have a psychic because I give readings to psychics and mediums all the time. And they're in front of me doing their psychic thing. I can see the frequency they're tuning into. That's the same channel as our imagination. So I'm like, don't let them kick that out of you as a kid. Your imagination's real. And it's the same channel, so you just stay open to it. And that's why I like to describe it in sessions that way. I'm like, no, it's not a psychic thing you have to advance to. You have an imagination, right? And I'm like speaking to an invisible person in a session, like, yeah, I'm like, that's the psychic stuff. Realize it, get out of your own way. And if all of a sudden you hear a random thought in your head, don't expect it to be in some accented voice like spirit guide Bob from France or something. Nah, it's your own thoughts sometimes. And that's how it comes in. And it'll open up from there once you realize that, like I said, advance your understanding, then the psychic stuff becomes stronger because you realize, oh, it's already there in my imagination. Then when that subtle imagination happens, you realize there's something more to the story. So it's kind of like lifting a heavy object. You have to lift it enough times, you're going to get strong. That's just how it kind of goes. Just realize, like I think it was Ben that was saying something earlier. I think synchronicity, breadcrumbs, whoever brought that up earlier in the show, keep following those things, paying attention to them. That's using your psychic awareness. And then all of a sudden, the stuff's going to get more in your face and heightened sense.
Yeah, that's what I told the waffle vendor at the show was follow the synchros because he was having good luck with those waffle necklaces and he was really excited about it. I was like, dude, that's your ticket. Like he already sold, I forget the number, but he already sold like a bunch of them that day. So yeah, absolutely follow the synchronicities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then being consistent about trying to perpetuate this state of love and keeping armored is something I try to do every day. That's what the challenge is, right? And that's what the point behind this podcast is to try to inspire and to help people perpetuate that in their lives and help me because this spells affect the person that puts them out there first. And so I want all good things for everybody, including myself, right? So just love frequency here. And I think unless anybody has anything else, that'll do it for this week's episode.
No, I'll just let you all, because I don't know if you all heard at the end, but we are running this one live. So we are on Cosmic Reality radio. So, and we'll be live on the air. There's a player on the KrononautChronicles.com website. So if any of you want to get that HTML code, I can give it to you later too. And I'm just kind of announcing during the show now too. So listeners hearing this later will realize, hey, I can go to KrononautChronicles.com and we have a audio player and a live chat room for even right now. And we'll continue that as well. So, and we'll embed those players on other websites. No, I had a great time, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're gonna try to do this live on Mondays every Monday. And being able to chat with the audience is super exciting. I'm not really too familiar with live shows anymore because 13 questions was all pre-recorded, but I'm looking forward to developing that aspect later on down the line as we get further into this working that is Krononaut Chronicles. But this is only the third episode, so I think it was a good one. Thank you all for joining me. I really don't have anything else to say here other than until next time, Chrononauts, carpe diem.